Hey, what's up beautiful people? It's your boy the Gunsmith, and it's almost Valentine's Day, and I wanted to make a special video just to talk to you guys about the institution of marriage. We're about to get real heavy here and talk about some long-term commitment. I think that Valentine's Day can be incredibly cheesy and it's become so commercialized. I think that companies like Hallmark just invented it just so they can sell more cards and more merchandise. But you know, it doesn't take away from the fact that love is one of the most important things in life, and a lot of us are looking for it. And I wholeheartedly believe that a person does need love in their life, and I really believe in the institution of marriage as well. I've personally been married for 2.5 years, so I wanted to tell you guys some of the lessons that I've learned from my marriage. If some young people out there are considering marriage, or if you just got married, I hope that some of these points will be helpful for you. The first thing that I learned from marriage is that I need to listen more than I speak. I'm somebody who likes to hear myself talk a little bit. You know, that's why I'm also into vlogging. One of the most important things in marriage is to listen, because unless you listen, you can't really get an in-depth understanding of your spouse, and you can't really get to the bottom of what makes them tick and what they're all about. I also learned that I sometimes have the tendency to interrupt others, and that can be really bad in marriage because you want to let the other person really get their thoughts and feelings out. And what that does is I think it just creates a space where the other person can freely express themselves without feeling that they're going to be criticized, or that the other person is just listening so that they can respond. We should make an effort to make our spouse feel like, you know, they can really be themselves, and I think listening is such an important part of that. When we want to just talk and get our own point across, I think that's a little bit egotistic, so it's important to let the other person really finish everything they have to say and really consider it before responding. Point number 2 that I want to make is to be best friends with your spouse. I think that some relationships maybe are a little bit formal, where the husband is just doing the husband's role, the wife is doing the wife's role, and you know, it's become too much about the role and it's not enough about the actual friendship and just hanging out and enjoying each other's company and doing things that are spontaneous and random like friends do. Sing and dance and just be happy together. I think that the roles of the husband and wife come afterwards. I think that friendship is really a great foundation to build a relationship on. Sometimes a husband or a wife might keep things from each other and they might start having their own little inner world. I don't think that's what friendship is about, because best friends talk to each other about everything. So if you can have that with your spouse, then you're really onto something. The next thing that I learned is that it's very important to give more than you take. If you're focused on how much you're getting out of a relationship and what the other person is doing for you, then you lose sight of what you're doing for them, and then it becomes an imbalanced relationship. For example, if you had a really tough day at work and you come home and you just want to relax, and then you start judging your spouse that they're not doing enough to make you feel better, I think that's really the wrong attitude to take. You have to sort of push yourself. Even on your worst day, you have to be focused on what kind of value you're creating for your spouse and what you're bringing to the table. Despite having a bad day, maybe you can do the dishes, maybe you can cook. When your spouse sees that, when they see that you're really going the extra mile for them, they're gonna go that extra mile for you, and that way you will be taken care of because you take care of them. So I think that when we become more focused on the other person in a marriage, they become more focused on us, if it is a good marriage and they're not a selfish person. So you sort of have to reverse your wiring, because a lot of us are individualistic. We're used to looking out for ourselves first, but in a marriage it's all about the other person. Obviously you got to take care of your basic needs, but you know what, if you have a great marriage, the other person will take care of your basic needs because you've helped them understand what your basic needs are. Point number 4 that I want to make is that it's very important to laugh. Our brains are wired in a way that we always need some kind of entertainment. And some people, entertainment for them ends up being gossip, or it ends up being a little bit of drama, or sometimes when everything is peaceful, they might unintentionally create some conflict, but it's because their brain just wants something to be going on. But instead of having all those intense and negative emotions, why not just create laughter? Why not just be a bit silly? Watch a comedy or an animation film or just something light. I think that laughter is just so important for people to de-stress, because life is serious. We all have so many pressures we're dealing with. The space that you create with your spouse, I think it should be a happy space. That's what I've learned in marriage, is that when you focus on trying to make each other laugh, it just ends up being such a nice relationship and a comfortable space where you can unwind. Point number 5 that I learned was that it's important to create something together with your spouse. I don't mean just create some babies right away, you know, that's not what I mean. Create something as in start some project. For example, for me, YouTubing is such an important part of my life. My wife helps me out with it, you know, with shooting the videos and giving input, and I'm able to bounce ideas off of her. And it wasn't always like that, you know. Initially when we got married, I was very insistent on doing everything myself when it came to YouTube, and I sort of shut her out a little bit. But when I started letting her in and making her part of the process, she actually enjoyed it a lot, and I think I got a little bit better at it and more comfortable at it because I have someone who's supporting me now. So it became a project that we're doing together, and now recently I've been pushing her to get into YouTube as well because I think she secretly likes it, and this way we're able to build something together. So I think marriage is all about creating these positive memories and just working together on something and having a vision for what you want your future together to be. Point number 6 that I want to make is don't jump into parenthood, guys, because I would say that first of all, the world's extremely overpopulated, and you know, we're really tapped for resources here. So I'm not telling you guys don't have kids, because obviously who am I to tell you that? What I'm trying to say is that it's really important to savor those moments with your spouse before you jump into that. Some people have the mentality, I want to have all these kids when I'm young so that I can still be young when they're growing up and have the energy to play with the kids, and that's all well and good, but then maybe you don't get enough time with your spouse. Maybe you don't get to create things with them and go on these amazing adventures together because there's always kids around, and then they become the main focus. So I think it's so important to create a really deep bond with your spouse, because that'll really strengthen your relationship, and then your relationship won't be tested as much when the kids do come along because you'll have such a solid foundation already. Point number 7 that I want to talk about, it's so important to nip it in the bud. So whenever there's any conflicts, whenever there's a disagreement, I think it's important to address it right away, even if you and your spouse don't really feel like talking about it right at that moment. It's very easy to sweep things under the rug, and it's comfortable to do that, and you want to not talk about unpleasant things, and if you had a bitter fight, that's not something that's enjoyable to talk about. You want to move on from that, and that's fine. But you know what? If you let that slide, if you let that go, the next time you fight about that one thing, it's going to be worse. It's going to be way worse. It's important to bring it up very, very soon and say that, listen, I know we disagree on this, and let's talk about it so that we can come to some sort of understanding which allows us to get better and get stronger from this. I think that's so important to do, is not let things multiply and build up. If you have any negative energy in your relationship, I found that it's better to just jump on that and just squash it as soon as you can and just turn it into happiness, turn it into love. It's like patching up a wound, you know? If you leave that wound open, it's gonna bleed you dry. But if you patch it up ASAP, you're able to just heal faster. Point number 8 I wanna make is to read between the lines, because sometimes your spouse might not tell you something explicitly. They might just hint at it, or they might be too nice to exactly tell you what their needs are. For example, you might be doing something that's keeping them up at night. You're going out too late with your friends, things that they may not complain about a lot, but it secretly bothers them, or they tell you in a nice way that it bothers them, but since they haven't raised their voice and really grilled you for it, you sort of keep doing it. But the problem is that marriage is a long-term thing, so if you keep repeating behavior that's upsetting to the other party, it can really multiply over the years. If something you're doing is bothering them and you do that week after week, year after year, then that person is eventually going to start maybe hating you or loving you less, because they're like, my spouse knows that this makes me angry or upset, but they keep doing it, so maybe they don't really care, and maybe they're doing it because they can get away with it. It's not about what you can get away with, it's about how you can make the other person happy. Try to really listen to what your spouse is saying and not saying, you know, maybe it's through their body language. If they're uncomfortable with something, if they're unhappy with something, just really take note of that, and I think you'll be happier for it. Point number 9 I want to make is just make that lifelong commitment with all your heart and decide to see it through. Because if you make that decision that, yes, I'm in this marriage to make it work, I'm in this to really make it last. This sounds like a no-brainer because, you know, everyone takes their vows, everyone wants their marriage to last forever, but I'm talking about if signs of trouble pop up, or if there's conflict, or if there's stress. My attitude has been, this is something that needs to be resolved. It's just a challenge that needs to be overcome so that we can get better. I start seeing challenges as opportunities for things to become even stronger. It's not something that's telling you that you're with the wrong person. person, because you gotta trust your instinct. Sometimes I feel like millennials, young people, they're just quick to blame the other person. They're so individualistic that they don't want to work with someone on actually fixing things. If you're deciding to marry someone, you can't play the blame game, and you have to think long term is what I'm trying to say. You have to see this person all the time, guys. You have to come home to them. You have to spend your whole life with them. So you can't do things that you know this person will remember 10, 20 years down the road. If you have a fight with your friend, you cannot talk to them for 6 months. Maybe after a while you patch it up. But with your wife or your husband, you gotta see them all the time. So you gotta think differently. You can't approach conflict the same way. You can't approach disagreements the same way. The whole attitude has to be, how do we not fight? How do we get better? It's not about who's right. It's really not about who's right. It's about love. It's about how much love can you give to the other person till they don't even feel like fighting, till it just transforms them into someone even better. That brings me to my last and most important point. Marriage is transformation. Marriage is influencing each other to become better people. I think that when you meet your soulmate, when you meet someone who's really for you, something changes inside you, and it continues to change over the course of the relationship. Chemistry is a reaction, so when you get married, it starts a lifelong process of evolution. The catalyst for that is love. When the love is deep enough, it's going to bring out the best in you, and it's going to bring out the best in the other person. 3 or 4 years ago, before I had met my wife, I was still doing YouTube stuff and I was expressing myself. But now I'm expressing myself 10 times more. Now I'm 10 times happier because I'm just completely being myself, who I really am, because I feel loved, I feel happy, and that's what marriage should be about. So I think what I've learned is that respect the process. Marriage is going to change you. It's going to change the other person. If you're married to someone for 5, 10 years, you can't look at them and say, you know, you've changed a lot. I don't know how I feel about that. You should be like, you've changed a lot, and I love that, because marriage is changing both of us. It's making both of us better, hopefully. But if they've changed for the worse, it could be something like they haven't received enough love, so that's caused them to become more bitter. Ultimately, we're all human beings. We all want to be loved and feel safe. And marriage is the best institution for that if both parties are completely on board in making it work and being loving and being respectful to each other. So guys, that's it for me this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to The Gunsmith. Keep it locked on Gunsmith Reloaded, and I'm going to hit you up every Sunday with a new video. Take care and have a happy Valentine's Day with your loved one.